It is really a pleasure to be here at Ohio State University. I find it very fitting and appropriate that this data is presented here for the first time, because when I was curator of astronomy in the museum field back in Springfield, I remember reading one day in Sky and Telescope an article about a very pioneering radio astronomer who, against great odds, had set up a facility not too far from here out of spare parts and baling wire and in the middle of a cow pasture, and ultimately wound up conducting some of the first serious SETI research, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence by means of radio, the ET will phone Ohio State University model. And it never dawned on me then that I would be standing on a stage at OSU to present to you some pretty interesting photographs, not of ETs phoning us, but of possible structures very close at hand that we can get back to almost day after tomorrow if we so choose. I've never done this before. This is the first time this data will have been presented. We've been working on this for about a year and a half, very quietly. It began almost by accident, as I will describe. And as we moved closer to a position where we could actually present this to an audience somewhere, there were lots of possibilities. We were in discussion with some folks in the administration. There have been discussions of bringing us to Washington to brief some of the Clinton administration people on what we have found. The time frame did not quite fit other schedules. So it fell by default, and a very wonderful default, I think, that we're going to unveil this information and these pictures, which are our pictures. We bought and paid for these pictures. And somehow, you and I have not gotten to see what's on these pictures for over 30 years. And it's high time that we did. And then we have some decisions to make about what we do about what's on these pictures, because the implications, both cosmologically and politically, are not trivial. So when it came time to do this, I realized that there could be no more fitting thing to do than to unveil this data before not political people, not media people, but real people. As some in New York call this, the heartland of America. So here we are at OSU. I'm very glad you're here. I'm glad to be here. And let's begin. I want to set the scene appropriately, because just before this nation physically sent men to the moon for the first time, a friend of mine, who became a friend of mine in subsequent years, and who sent me a very nice letter the other day, acknowledging that there finally, from his point of view, may be something in the Mars data after all, and I've now got his curiosity. Mr. Arthur C. Clarke debuted his stunning film, 2001. A couple days ago, Arthur wrote me this wonderful note acknowledging that the Mars data seems to be intriguing enough to be pursued. And I wanted to start tonight, because we titled this presentation 2001 Revisited, with a short reprise of what Arthur's claim to fame in the hearts of most Americans has been. Because in 1968, a few months before the first intrepid men of Apollo 8 went to the moon for the first time, Arthur's film, 2001, which he and Stanley Kubrick co-wrote, debuted, premiered in Los Angeles and New York. And for those who don't remember the premise or may not have seen the film, and is there anyone who has not seen this very interesting film, let me just encapsulate what it is about. What it is about is that as part of space activities, the officialdom, the equivalent of NASA in the next century, finds an artifact on the moon as part of its manned missions. It then decides, because of social, political, philosophical, and religious implications, to withhold that information from the world for a long period of time. It excavates the artifact in secret. It brings a cosmologist who's head of the equivalent of NASA of the day, all the way to the moon to look at the artifact with a cover story about some kind of disease or flu or something which has quarantined the base where the research is being conducted from. And in the penultimate scene in the film, you have these astronauts, spacesuited, projected ahead in time, because remember, this was done in the early 60s before we'd even designed the Apollo suits the astronauts were going to wear. You see these spacesuited individuals climbing down this ramp into this crater where the monolith, this 1 by 4 by 9 black slab, has been standing, waiting for over 4 million years. Now, if you think this is a foreshadowing of what you're going to see tonight, you will not be disappointed. Screen on, please. Only months later, with 1960s technology and 3 intrepid men, Borman, Lovell, and Anders, the beginnings of a saga like that began. It lasted through 12 astronauts and not too many years. This is now the final mission, the Endeavour mission of Apollo 17. All too briefly, our foray to the moon, our exploring the unknown with people like Gene Cernan and Harrison Schmitt, was over, almost before it had begun, almost before we could turn around this nation which began a journey that was to last into infinity, suddenly stopped going.
We're coming in. There it is, proceeded. And there it is, Houston, there's Camelot. Wow, target. I see it. We got them all. 42 degrees, 37 degrees, to 5,500. Stand by for some dust. Little forward, G. Pivot forward a little. 90 feet. Little forward velocity. 80 feet. Going down at 3. A little dust. Going down about 2. Very little dust. Very little dust. 40 feet, going down at 3. Stand by for touchdown. Stand by. 25 feet, down at 2. Feels good. 20 feet. Going down at 2. 10 feet. Contact. A push. Engine stop. Okay, Houston, the Challenger has landed.